The sun has risen.
What do you mean?
Ilanga seliphumile.
Oh, that reason.
We have a new king. A new king.
A single king, Natasha. A very single man. And people are like, oh, can he be an actual king unless he's married or something along those lines. Takona indoda maybe le muli or le family or ibithethwe or something. So opportunities arise. Sithumele CV, Natasha.
I don't think I fit the bill.
What is the requirement?
Well, to be indlovukazi sibili yoqobo, you have to be also a daughter from a royal house. I mean,
you are a daughter from a royal house.
I am, Yazi.
Why are you discounting yourself? You are. What else?
I think that for you to be like indlovukazi, obviously you can be a wife, just out of, but yeah, guys, King Misuzulu. Misuzulu.
Hi. Kabayense.
Bayete.
Bayete, indeed. Bayete.
I will come back to this, but welcome to Girl in Skies podcast with me, Natasha.
And Xolie.
I sometimes go by Nat.
I sometimes go by Michelle. So I'm also a daughter of a queen and daughter of royalty. But it's just that I'm taken, I'm off the market. But if it wasn't for that, I just wanted to throw it out there. So I could be a candidate if it wasn't for the fact that I was in a happy relationship.
So you have to choose which king.
Exactly. I've chosen a king. I've chosen.
We love it. But actually, interestingly enough, so I haven't really been paying too much attention to, everything that's been happening with the Zulu kingdom.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because very like most kingships are contested. Even like Lobengula was contested. Wasn't Shaka contested? Even our own Bulelani.
Yes.
Our own king.
Why do you think that is? Is it because it's such a prominent, like it's such a high position? Like, why do you think that is? Like, why is there such a history of people contesting and contention? Why is that?
Do you know what? I think it's because it's I think there are different traditions like that other people follow. What I do know, right, and what I've always understood is that a king, right, we use the term queen loosely, right? Because we'll be like, oh, the king's wife is queen, right? But actually, indlovukazi, like the actual queen, really, it has to be from a royal household. So it has to be like the daughter of a king, right? And then that is in-law. It doesn't matter whether she is wife number 4, 5, 6, right? And then the heir, when the two come together, their offspring is then the rightful heir. But then I think some people have different schools of thoughts. So you'd have, okay, like I said, with this one, I don't want to pretend like I've been following. I haven't really been. But the only thing that I do know is that King Misuzulu's mother, apparently, from my understanding, and apologies if I'm getting this wrong, is that she is King Swati's sister.
Oh, I see.
Right? So meaning that Anchu King Swati, like his father was the king. So but she was the third wife of the king. And
so wait, was it the sister or the third wife of the king? I'm now confused.
She's King Swati, Swaziland. She's King Swati's sister.
Okay.
King Swati's sister married the Zulu king.
I see. Okay.
But is the third wife of the Zulu king. Then Zulu is her first son, right? But she is not the most senior wife. There is another senior wife. So it's very similar to, say, Lobengula, right? Ulobengula ulo Queen Lozike is like, known. We all say Queen Lozike, but Queen Lozike is not Indlovukazi. I'm sorry, guys. I know some of you, like, I'm touching you in your studio. She's not Indlovukazi because she came from Abagodlodlo, like a military family. She is not the daughter of a king. She's not from a royal household. Which is why Queen Lozike really was Lobengula's senior wife. But when he now needed to have can I go into this, or is this boring?
No, I think it's really interesting. Go for it.
Okay. And historians, if you're out there, I stand to be corrected where I get it wrong. Ulobengula, right? So Lozike is senior wife. Ulobengula kwasekulethwa Mam Kwananzi, right? There was a Mam Kwananzi who was brought to be the because she came from a royal household, right? So she was brought in to be the wife, right? However, what happened is Umam Kwananzi was struggling to get pregnant, right? Although we know nowadays we would say they were both struggling to get pregnant, right? So what they then did is that they brought Ihlanzi, Imvogodo, another Mam Kwananzi, probably maybe her young sister or cousin or something, but from the same sort of household.
Yeah.
So now Lobengula had two Mam Kwananzi. Mam Kwananzi uNdlovukazi, Mam Kwananzi Ihlanzi, right? Both of them. And then as these things happen, right? Umam Kwananzi, the Nhlanzi, the one that's brought in essentially to give birth on behalf of her sister, gets pregnant. But as these things, as they have it, Mam Kwananzi's sister is pregnant also too. Yeah. So she was pregnant from before. So because an assumption on my part is that, maybe not expecting to get pregnant, she's not looking out for it. So maybe they discover it, I don't know, 4 or 5 months down the line. Oh, actually, you're pregnant. So the story has it that, so you now have the two Mam Kwananzi pregnant. And then the elders in their sort of wisdom, whatever, say, well, not really wisdom, but so Mam Kwananzi senior gives birth, right? I'll come back to this. Mam Kwananzi senior gives birth, Mam Kwananzi junior gives birth, right? Mam Kwananzi junior gives birth, they say, no, we can't, this is just going to cause strife and problems in future. So nenhlanzi like can't, essentially just can't be alive, right? So apparently basosithithwa umntwana was taken to the kraal, like esibayeni. And the idea was that overnight, the cows will trample. Yep. On umntwana. So the legend has it that in the morning they wake up and they go to the kraal, esibayeni. Lo and behold, the baby is very much still alive. And apparently is at like the center of the kraal, and the cattle are surrounding the child, almost like protecting the child. And some versions of history will say almost like bakoteme. What's that? What is that in English?
Bowing down, kind of.
Yeah, like as if like the cattle almost kind of like bowing down, right?
Yeah.
So that baby was called Mhlambi because of that. And then there are some people who then say that the elders were like, oh, this is an out of this world thing that has happened. So for that reason, right, Umhlambi should be given is called.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then I'll just go back to the other. So the other child, Mam Kwanan's senior, was Unyamande, right? And I'll go on a tangent a little bit.
Go for it.
Is that in history, right? What's interesting, especially about Ndebele history, and particularly because it brings so many cultures together, is because umuntu o yelachwa yinyanga. Is it inyanga elaphayo? Apologies again if I'm wrong, guys, correct me. In Ndebele culture, what they did is they would say if a traditional healer came to help you get pregnant, if you're having fertility issues and you did get pregnant, the child would be named after the traditional healer.
Oh, really?
Yes. So hence Nyamande. And I believe ukuthi kulabantu bako Nyamande who are from like Mutare and stuff. So that's why I'm saying it's so interesting. Like our Ndebele history tells a story, even the names and everything, because then, yeah. So that's why you had Nyamande, you had then Mhlambi, right? So I'm giving you an example of like those stories where even now, when we now had King Bulelana, when the Kumalas were, there were some people that were like, no, there's this story, this, that.
Yeah.
So yeah. And even Lopengula himself, there was contesting. But anyway, so is this the part where I tell y'all like how I am, like how I am real Brad?
Go for it. We are here listening.
Okay, without, so uLobengula waba lomhlambi, right? Umhlambi waba labantwana, and one of them was called Dabengwa Khumalo, who was married to Xolie Hlabangana, who happened to be one of the first Black nurses in Rhodesia, according to her, right? And then they then had a child called Miriam Tonsilekwa Khumalo, who was married to Catwoman Wova Fian, who their children, and then they had a child called Sito. You know what? Basically, no, because I'm now telling things that I'm thinking. When you're asking mother's maiden name. Let's just say that a child called Tawazile who had a child called Natasha.
No.
So
I'm going to actually
some respect.
My direct lineage. Like, I know that we are directly descended from Ziligazi. So there's like this whole complicated family tree, and I need to kind of spot where like I come in, like where my mom comes in. But all these like Kumalos, we've got Mkwanansis, we've got Dlondos. So we've got pure, authentic royal blood in my family, Like, you think people shouldn't sleep on me. Like, Yazi, when was it that day, Akubula? Last Wednesday. And I was saying, and look, when we had friends over, and they were like, oh, we should ask somebody from the royal family. I was like, you don't? Hello? We are here. Ask us. We may need to find out where exactly, how things kind of fall into place. But I think it's quite nice that that whole direct lineage from your mom's side as well. I think I need to do that. I need to really explore that part of the tree and be, because it's important, it's important to be able to point where you come from, where your descendants come from, because it helps to kind of shape who you are as well. That's in Novio's book, I think it's actually one of the opening lines where she says something along the lines of identity, something along about identity and being able to point yourself, being able to point to your grandfather, say that's my grandfather, that's my father. There's something that helps to shape your identity. So yeah. So guys, if you're out there, and also just a segue a bit into, do you see this tweet, right? I'm just going to share it quickly. Thanks. I think this was Vanessa who brought this to our attention. So there's somebody who mentioned, was it you? I don't remember. It was you. It was you. You sent that tweet by, let me see who this is by, at D_hilariously, who was basically talking about how she met her sibling on the internet, So all I'm saying is, if you are, we share, you might be looking at us and thinking, oh, those two, maybe we are related. DM us, we might be. Because I think it's that, back in the day, there was a lot of sharing. Full stop.
Full stop. Yeah.
We'll explore that a bit later on. Natasha is still a bit sensitive about it. Now I want to talk about the generation before us, particularly the men.
No, we'll do it on our Patreon because
that's a good idea actually. Yeah.
We'll do
my name, guys. That should be my middle name. Zulu. Xolie, it should be Sibaneng, because there's loads of us. I'm sure I might find my own siblings here on Twitter as well, on social media, Instagram, everywhere, YouTube. Anyway, story for another day. So what else has been happening? What's happening with you?
No, story for another, but we should have that conversation. I think, we'll do it on Patreon, because I've been cautioned about oversharing. So I'll do it on Patreon.
Who cautioned you?
Different people, like, just, when you be like, oh, you talk about me. Oh, okay. Thank you, Sherlock, or whatever. But I think it'll be interesting to talk about that, like discovering siblings, also sibling dynamics when you didn't grow up together.
Yeah. I think it would be a good conversation. So in preparation for that, guys, if you have got any unique or interesting stories about how you met your siblings, like we already have this whole thread, I think that has kind of gave birth to quite a lot of other stories. So if you've got something that you'd like to share with us that we can share as well, you can just message us, DM us on our social media pages, and we'll explore. So yeah, so what else is happening?
Okay. So I wanted to oh, sorry, I just have to one last thing. Going back to my great grandmother, Mashabangana. Do you know what? Like I know you said like your Coco like was you met your Coco, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, so Umahlangana passed away when I was in Form 2. I remember. Yeah. I was in Form 2. But I just look back at that. I'm like, oh, that was because she was like 90 something at that point. And like Waishale, anyway, let me not divulge because but anyway, like I look back at that, I'm like, oh, that's so blessed. Like I really wish that because a lot of this is like, you know, when I'm reading stuff, I'm like, I know these people. So like I say, like her name was Xolie Shabangana, whatever, she was a nurse, and she wouldn't let you forget. She was like, Tina, when we're nurses, like one of the first crop, because she was born in I think early 1900s. And her brother actually was I was about to say a guy called, it sounds so rude, right? Nsele Shabangana, who is, if you are a Highlanders fan, you will know of Nsele Shabangana because he was very active and like one of the key people for reviving Highlanders and everything. And I think in Bulawayo there's actually a Shabangana lounge. I want to say.
I wouldn't know.
So there's a lot of history there. So I've always thought to myself, I wanted to, like, after I did the Queen Laws K thing, I was like, oh, I want to write about Ukok Mashabangan. But then I've kind of been like, I don't know, I feel like I need to ask for permission from, I don't know who. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, but no, anyway. Yeah?
It would be interesting to read about that. Yeah, you should definitely find out, like, you know, if you feel like you need permission from someone, because it's important to document these things, you know, to put it into paper. And just like I'm saying that as it is, I look at a bit of paper and I need to look and see, like, you know, this is like the generation, like our family tree was done by a generation above me. So like my mom's cousins, I suppose one of them did it. But then as it progresses, you know, like I should be able to say to Tamara, you know, your great grandmother did this. But I also need to be factual on the information that I'm giving, because then it gets very diluted as time progresses. So I need to be very sure about what I'm saying. So I think it's important to write things down. I need to do my bit of research as well.
Yeah, no, me too. I know a lot on my mom's side, nothing on my dad's side really. So I need to sort that out.
The men's side,
huh?
I'm not really interested in my father's side. Just wait. Yeah. But yeah, you know, like another thing when you talk about your great grandmother, you know, just how blessed, you know, to have lived. No, not for my great grandmother to have lived for as long as she did. She died when she was 100, and I want to say 107. But I remember there was a time after Tamara was born where my great grandmother was there, her daughter was there, my great grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, me, and Tamara. So all 5 generations were there. And there's a picture somewhere lying around somewhere. I need to actually dig that up, because, you know, you just appreciate just how blessed that is, you know, just to have all those generations together in one space. It was remarkable, I would say.
Yeah, that's what I would want, like for my kids and whatever. That's why I'm always like long life, because I just think it's just so blessed, because you realize that you miss out on so much when, you know, I'm like, oh, grandma, mom, hey, it is well.
It is. It will be well. Those who are coming after us will have better, because we'll be there to direct them on. But yeah, anyway, so this week we wanted to talk about, I wanted just to share a little, just get your thought process on something, because, you know, I think I'm a bit more aware of myself, if that makes sense. Maybe that's not the right word, but let me explain. I'm a bit more aware of the way that I act and the way that I deliver messages, the way I interact with people. I have this level of awareness, and I don't know if it's because, you know, there's an element that we obviously were so different. And there's things that I come to you and I'm like, oh, what do you think about this? Because I think you add that whole personalized touch to things, whereas I can be a little bit more to the point, and sometimes it's not very what's the word? Sometimes it's not very cushioned, whereas you would. So it made me think, like, recently, our PT that we're both sharing roped me into this little scheme. It's called a gifting scheme. To me, it reads pyramid scheme. Yo, guys, English data bundles have run out. But I said, not that he wrote me in. I said yes because I was just like, oh, you know, I looked at, is it worth, it's £10. I haven't paid anything. I don't need to participate in anything. So it was quite easy for me. I was like, oh, you know what? It's fine. And because it's who the person is, I was like, okay, you know what? I'll give it a shot. But it made me really think that, you know, is there things that you find hard to say no to? Like, is there things that are, you know, if I came to you and asked you something, would you find it hard to say no to me? And would you find it hard to say no to me because I am your friend? And if somebody else, for example, maybe you didn't have the level of interaction that we have had, came to you and asked you this exact same thing, and you knew in your heart of hearts that, you know what, this is a no, and you would say no. So I'm just trying to, if that makes sense, I'm just trying to gauge the way we are, how we interact with different people, and how sometimes you can get into this system of just saying, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Are you saying it, yes, I'll do it because of the person who is asking? Or are you saying, yes, I'll do it because you feel more pressured, if that makes sense? So I don't know if it's easy to separate those two things. In my head, it is. So what do you think? Has that come across? Like, I'm hoping that it makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think, like, your question is, how easy is it to say no? Because you always say to me, Natasha, your no should be firm.
Yeah.
Because my no is not firm.
No, it's not. It's very wishy-washy.
So I think that, okay, I am a recovering people pleaser, right? It's taken me a while not to care about what people think, so it's two things: not to care about what people think and not to try and please people. But I've always kind of like cared about what people think. Like, if someone didn't like me, like I would really be like, oh my God, like, why don't they like me? How can I change them not liking me? Now obviously it's less,
Yeah.
I've accepted that, what, there's some people who just will not like the sight of you, will not like hearing you breathe, like when you haven't done anything. But I don't know, I just think it's but it's funny because, for example, like with the thing that you're talking about, right? The scheme, whatever. Because you asked me.
You said no straight away.
I said no. I was so proud of myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, how can Xolie get roped into this? Our PT, we love you, but
Guys.
I was like, how can Xolie get roped into this? But maybe it's also.
But you know what? Like, just to really, if somebody, and this is what I'm saying to you, if somebody else had come to me and said, oh, hey, I'm doing this, I'd be like, absolutely not. I'm not getting involved with that. But yeah, it's because of, number one, it's who it is, And I've tried to say to him, Uti, you know what, this is not going to work. But it also gives me satisfaction when I get involved with things like this, and then I'm like, you know what, I told you that this wasn't going to work. I'm not investing anything at the end of the day. I'm not standing to lose anything. I haven't put anything towards anything. It's just literally, he has my name, and he's like, oh yeah, let's do this. I'm like, oh, okay. But it's not something that I so you see, it's not that I can say no to him, but I also just want to I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but it's also just, I want to not see him, but I want to support his little venture, if that makes sense. Even though it's something I don't necessarily feel like it's going to pick off and do great things. Which is why I didn't pressure you even after you said no, because I know I could come back and be like, Natasha, think about this. Let's do it for our friends.
But it's funny because I think with that particularly, right, is because just because of my working background, like I used to work in financial services, and where we would spot scams, right? So I think when it comes to things like that, I am so, because it's two things for me. It's like, no, I think this is a scam, or it's not gonna work. And also, I don't want you to, I love you enough. Like, I don't want you to go down this road, because it's gonna be a waste of your time. So if me coming to you and being like, nah, even if you may not agree then, but afterwards, if it's going to plant that seed of doubt in your mind, and then maybe later you'll be like, okay, now let me not deal with it, right? So for me, that's kind of more important. But I think with me, I sometimes I get a bit bamboozled, like like I said, I find it hard to say no, full stop, with no excuse.
Why?
Because I feel like you should give like, I don't know, like it's the people pleasing in me, it's the, and actually I think I find it easier to say no to people I know very closely, because I feel like I have credit in the bank with you. So if I say no to this one thing, it's not going to wipe off all my credit. You're just going to be like, oh, okay, she said no to this thing. But if it's people that I don't know, like I'm saying, I've always thought that I've always thought, oh, as I've gotten older, I can be firm, whatever. But it's interesting that you say that, because I had a similar, well, not a similar, but I had a situation recently, which was kind of like, I was taken aback about like just how I reacted to something. It was just something that someone asked me to do, but I just I just couldn't do it. Like it, like just don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to do it. But then I did that whole like, oh, I can't really help, but you know what, like the whole wishy-washy sort of thing. And I was kind of like, and then it made me realize that I think I've thought to myself that, oh, I'm firm and I'm a recovered people pleaser. But maybe how I've done it is I've adopted that yes, yes, no, yes sort of thing. Like, and then I've relied on people receiving that to read in between the lines and then be like, okay, I heard a no, so let me not push. But then I think what I realized, what I hadn't built that muscle for is when people insist
yeah,
and like almost coerce you, is it? And it made me be like, oh dang, like I'm so weak. Like I didn't realize that
but I don't think that it's weakness. I think you're doing it out of that niceness. So again, I think, I'm trying, like when you're speaking, I was also just thinking about myself in this particular instance where I don't feel like I've been coerced. I've just kind of given in, I was just like, okay, we'll do it. So I'm just wondering if there's an element of me people pleasing there as well, because I'm not doing it because I believe in it. I'm just doing it because of the person who has asked me. So I don't know if there is that element of people pleasing. But I don't necessarily think that it's weakness. I think it's just niceness. Whereas for me, if somebody came and put something on my table and said, oh, I have this proposition, say, I'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. And I wouldn't feel entitled to give you an explanation, because I feel like, what my no should be a no. And that is the way that I definitely, that's the way that I think. And I think after our conversation today, it made me question again myself that, am I actually too, like, without giving that whole, oh, this is the reason why I'm saying no, but I, as a person, that is the sort of interaction that I would want. Somebody to come, if I was to ask you to do direct with me, and I just prefer that black or white, yes or no. Don't be in and out. Don't make me second guess. Oh, is that yes mean? Is that no, but a partly yes? Like, I don't want that. I'd want somebody to be very direct and like, actually, Michelle, Xolie, that's not, it's not me. What you're asking me is not me. I don't want to do it. But thank you. I would appreciate that. And I wouldn't even then go back to be like, oh, but why? Why don't you want to? It's such a great da-da-da. I'm like, no, that's fine. I would respect that. But don't take us both down on a rabbit hole of, but you said yes, but I'm not getting the enthusiasm. I'm not getting the, I'm not getting how that you're in this with me. Do you know what I mean? I prefer you to say no from the start. And that's who I am, and the more I get to accept that this is me, it kind of scares me a little bit as well, if I'm really honest, because I see just how transactional that is, and I have always thought that, like in the last few years, and again, it takes me back into work, because I was telling you about this whole insights thing that we have to do, or that we have done, that tells you about how you lead by different colors. And because I did a lot of research about colors and how people lead and leadership for my dissertation, and I came out of my master's with the idea that, you know what, the person that I want to lead, or the person who I want to transformational leader, so somebody who leads from the, somebody who is motivating, somebody who will come in and find out, hey, what's going on with you? Anyway, so this is kind of the project. This is what I want you to do. So even with my emails, it's always like, hey, hi, how are you? Hope this email finds you well. Kind regards, blah, blah, blah. But I also recognize that there's this part of me that is very transactional, where I'm like, actually, I do want to know that you're well, but the main purpose of this email is for you to do this. Do you know what I mean? So it's very much read more of a transactional, not more of a transformational leader. So it kind of alarms me quite a bit that this is, the more I get into it, the more I see that this is the person that I am. And which is why perhaps it's easy for me to kind of say, I'm not interested in that, because that's, again, more me being more transactional than more transformational. And with my friendship groups, I try to be more transformational. But then I sometimes worry, do I remember that, to add that niceness? Do you know what I mean? Like, if that makes sense. So, that's where I am with life currently. I'm just in this middle of really checking myself, really checking myself, and like, okay, so who is it that you want to be, and who is it that you want to portray yourself as? Do you want to be somebody who says no quite quickly? Or do you want to be that person who says no because I am watering my plants, or whatever it is? Do you know what I mean?
No, I totally get you. I think I've never done the insights color thing, so I'd be interested in knowing what color I am.
I can tell you. I'm sure you'd be yellow. Please do it. Please do it. I am 100% sure you'd be yellow.
What is yellow?
Let me see if I can Google it quickly. So be talking.
I like yellow. Yellow is my favorite color, but it sounds like it absorbs a lot. What color were you?
So I think I want to be, I find out like next Thursday. So it's in, I want to be like blue. Whereas red is somebody who's motivated by power. So keep going. I'm going to look for it and see if I can find it quickly. Color personality test.
Yeah, I've seen something say sunshine yellow leader.
Yes. What does it say?
It says will radiate enthusiasm and encourage participation of others. They enjoy and seek the company of others and are full of ideas and plans for the future and will welcome change. 12, the characteristics are sociable, dynamic, demonstrative, enthusiastic, persuasive, expressive. What's the downside though? The flip side.
Tell me.
Excitable.
Mm-hmm. No comments.
Frantic. Indiscreet. Hasty. Okay. Oh, the fiery red leader. Is that you?
Please don't. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's so guys, if you're listening out there and you maybe you've been in a similar position where you find it easy, or do you not find it easy to say no to people? Do you get roped into things that you maybe don't have the bandwidth for, you don't have capacity for? Like, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with your friends are asking you and they keep pushing and they're like, oh, but, and start giving you, and you said no? Like, how would you deal with that? So it'd be really interesting to hear how other people deal with these things.
Yeah, no, I want to learn to be a bit more firm. It's so weird because I thought I had, but then I'm realizing that actually, no, I have a lot more learning to do.
But it's because, and like, I don't feel that I'm not nice. I think I am nice too. But I think you are definitely up a notch. So, so I think sometimes, like, even when you say no, you're like, yeah, okay, so maybe not. You like already you said maybe, and someone can then come and really push, like, because you've already expressed that doubt with it, or maybe. So I'm like, oh, so there's a chance that maybe you can. So if you're saying maybe you can't, maybe you can. Do you see what I mean? So automatically, if you're on the receiving end of that, you're going to be like, this is an opportunity. I mean, some people will be like, you know what, yeah, that's fine. You said no. They'll capture the no in as you have thrown out the maybe, yes, no. They'll capture the no. But somebody else can come and make you really, can push you into doing something that you don't want to do. And I remember, like, was it a week or 2 months ago, or was it a month ago? I don't remember, when you sent that little paragraph of, oh, let me send declining that thing at work. And I was like, but why do you have to put in all these, it's a work thing. You don't need to put in all these niceties. Just be very direct. Someone has asked you a direct question, so respond to that and be like, actually, no, I can't do this because I've got too much on my plate at the moment. But you're like, oh, hey, sun is shining. Wonderful day it is. How's the family? How's the dog? Oh my God. Listen, about that thing you were saying. I was like, you're responding to a direct question and you're already putting in all this fluff around it. Just respond direct and be like, actually, I've thought about it. I can't do it just now. I can't do it ever, because it's not something that I'm able to do, and leave it at that. It's interesting. It's interesting. Like, I find it so fascinating just how different people react to things, And I'm so glad that I have you in my life because of, I tell you about my relationship with my guy, right? And he's an added layer of nicety. So he's very much, I'll go off on a tangent, and he's the sort of person who kind of really bring me down. So sometimes I go to Natty tonight. So I said this, and then Nat will just be in dismay, like, how could you say that? So I'm like, okay, so if Nat is hurt by that, that means there's definitely, he's not showing me, but he's probably hurt by this as well. So I am grateful.
I'm your relationship
You are my barometer.
barometer. Yeah. Do we have time?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Can I talk about my toxic podcast?
Oh yes, go for it. You said you wanted to talk about this.
Okay, so just quickly. So Joe Budden podcast, JPP, the PP boys are back in business. Anyway, so one of my guilty pleasures is the Joe Budden podcast. Yeah, like I think Joe Budden podcast is probably one of the biggest podcasts serving the urban market. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So you've listened to the Joe Budden podcast. Yeah. So it's Joe Budden with Rory and Mal. So it's the Joe Budden podcast with Rory and Mal. And then they've got Parks, who does the sound engineering. But, as the episodes have gone on, like Parks talks a little bit more. So Joe Budden, anyone who has kind of followed Joe Budden podcast is Marmite. Like he's one of those characters, like you either absolutely despise him or you love him. Like I think I always used to listen to podcasts, right? Like The Read and stuff, Kid Fury and Crystal and stuff like that. And they hate him, right? And for good reason. There's stuff that Joe Budden has done in the past. I think even he's sort of said. But I think how did I start listening to Joe Budden? Okay, so I think I listened to The Brilliant Idiots with Charlemagne and Andrew Schultz, and they used to always kind of go at Joe Budden. And then I think randomly, I was just like, let me listen to Joe Budden. I think he had a guest or something. And literally, I got hooked from that time. I enjoy listening to people that just think totally different to me, even if I may disagree or whatever. Right. So I just started listening to Joe. And I what I enjoy also about the podcast is like if you're really into music, into like hip hop, R&B, like I love the way, like their music knowledge is top tier, and just how they break down music. And so Joe Budden he's a gifted conversationalist, if I can put it that way. If you are a podcaster, like if you listen to Joe Budden talk, just the way his mind talks and the way he like brings conversation together, like him or hate him, like that's a talent that he has. But Joe Budden has been so their podcast was a Spotify exclusive podcast, which then Joe Budden said nah, because he was not happy with the terms. He was not happy with the compensation that they were being offered, because he felt he was bringing more to Spotify. And I kind of agreed in parts, but then, and then he had this big podcast where basically he was, just forgetting. They always tell you that you need to leave a place on good terms. But Joe Budden burnt bridges.
You did.
So this is just giving context, especially for people who don't know. But anyway, so that's kind of his thing, and the whole thing is kind of like, oh, Joe Budden, like he messes up the bag, right? Because even before he was on Everyday Struggle, and then he left, whatever. So now, they've got their podcast, Joe Budden, Rory and Mal. It's been going on for years. Now they're, independent, not on Spotify, not exclusive, but on Patreon and all that stuff. And then one episode on my Saturday, I'm like, oh, Joe Budden. I'm like, man, this is my toxic kick. I'm like, oh, because Joe Budden podcasts are like 2 hours, 3 hours long. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I listen to Joe Budden podcast and I go for my walk. Sometimes like weekend, I'll be like, hey, I want to walk like 6K or 10K if I feel up to it. And I put on my Joe Budden podcast. I turn it on. I hear these other people who are not Rory and Mal. I must say, I have a big crush on Mal. Like, Mal is my crush. So I'm like, what's going on? And then Joe Budden's like, oh, Rory and Mal are on vacation. Like, okay. In the next episode, oh, Rory and Mal are still on vacation. I'm like, vacation?
What's going on?
And then that's when I'm like, nah, let me go into this Twitter streets. Then people are now speculating, nah, something's going on with the pod. And I'm thinking, oh my days, like not the Joe Budden podcast.
So what's been happening?
So anyway, long story, I'll fast forward. So what then happens is Joe Budden brings in two of his other friends because he has his two co-hosts short, right? Mm-hmm. These guys, Ish and Ice, right? And so according to Joe Budden, he says that, oh, you know, there's just some friendship beef kind of going on. And then he says that
Rory and Mal.
Yes, Joe Budden, Rory and Mal, right? So he says, so this is Joe Budden. So Joe Budden says, oh, you know, there had been some tension in the pod. And then he's like, you know, I basically he was saying he didn't know what was happening with Rory, right? Because he was like, every time he would ask Rory what's going on, like what's going on at home, like Rory wouldn't answer. And then there's an episode that they had where Rory was like, kind of like almost threatening Joe Budden, like, like to a fist fight. But if you're listening, you would think, well, it's just banter, right? But when you now listen back with the context, you're like, oh, okay. And then there's a part where like Rory was like, oh, because Joe Budden was like, I think asking him about his home life, and then Rory was like, why should you know? And then Joe Budden was like, oh, like, you know, we're friends. And then Rory was like, really, are we? Sort of thing, right? So
really?
So then, right? But Rory has been rocking with Joe Budden for time. Like, you know, he's stuck with him through all of what, even the Spotify, I personally don't know if that was the greatest decision, personally, but I don't know. Like moving away from the Spotify exclusive deal. So anyway, so now Joe Budden, when he's now telling us, he says, oh, so you know, if things ain't right with the friendship, forget the pod. Da, 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 da. So he's like, you know, so he told Rory and said, this is why I want your opinion. So he told Rory and said, you know what, take some few weeks out of the pod, right? Mm-hmm. He texts him, like, do me a favor, take some you know, episodes out. And then Rory's like, huh? What the heck? Like, Joe, he didn't explain. It's like, oh, take some episodes out. And then I think Rory speaks to Mal, and then Mal speaks to Joe. And then anyway, Mal goes to record later on, like a few days after, right? And he's like, what's going on? And then Joe is saying, oh, I told Rory to take some time off, right? And then Mal's like, who are you to tell Rory not to come and pod? Right? And then apparently they get into a fight. And then now I'm really now fast forwarding because they come back, but this is now weeks after. This is now like 6 weeks after, right? And then apparently Joe Budden said to Mal, oh, like the pod is not your business. Because the thing is, it's Joe Budden, it's the Joe Budden podcast, right? Joe Budden does Joe Budden and his business partner called Ian, they do all the business stuff and all of that, right? So here's the thing, like I kind of, and then another thing, when Rory and Mal came back, Mal had a few issues, like, no, first of all, you don't tell, it's not your own decision to just say unilaterally, Rory, you shouldn't come and pod without speaking
with everybody else,
without having a conversation with him. And then he then says that, oh, he took offense to Joe Budden saying to Mal, oh, this is not your business. Because it's like, I've been here like for 5 years. Yes, it's the Joe Budden podcast. Yes, there's business and all that sort of stuff. But then, I think you owe your friends respect. And then Joe Budden was like, I don't owe my friends respect.
He said that.
Yeah.
On the podcast.
Yeah. So, and then I'll add one other layer, and then I want to get your thoughts. So, Mal's whole thing is like, you should have just stopped the pod until we got this figured out. Right? Joe Budden, on the other hand, is like, I think they skipped like a week podding. And then what he then did is he got his friends, Ice and Ish, to come and, keep the pod going. Because in Joe Budden's mind, it's like, the show must go on, the podcast space and everything, like the attention economy is so fickle. If the Joe Budden podcast is not there for X amount of weeks, how many people are you going to drive to the Brilliant Idiots? How many people are now going to start, listening to the Fragrant, whatever, Andrew Schultz's podcast? How many people will start listening to, his whole thing was the show must keep going. And then what happened when Ish and I started, even me, I was like, I'm not listening to this until Rory and Mal come back, right? And then like even the thumbs down on the YouTube, there were a lot. And then naturally, because people ain't loyal, we started listening to the Joe Budden with Ish and Ice, right? And over time, and one of them included, we were enjoying it because Ish and Ice are a bit old. I think they're older than Joe, because Joe is 40. Rory and Mal, like Rory is like 31 or something. Mal is 30 something, whatever, right? So the dynamics are different. Whereas Joe is 40, Ish and Ice are in their 40s. So it kind of turned into like an uncle pod. It's just a different, and I think also Ish and Ice are not industry people. So whereas like Mal is linked with Rock Nation, so anything about Jay-Z, they're careful. Rory used to work for Sony, and Rory wants to put an album. So people kind of feel like they're not honest sometimes about industry takes because of industry relationships. So Ish and Ice come, and then now people are like, oh man, we're enjoying this. Some people, not everyone. But yeah, but then anyway, now Rory and Mal have come back. I think,
that must be awkward.
It is, but I have to give it to Joe because I after his whole Spotify episode where he went on a rant, I didn't think we would ever get a better episode than that. But he gave us a better episode when he told us about, I don't know whether the boys are coming back. And when they came back, we got a good episode because we heard and it was good hearing from Rory and Mal because like the way they explained it, I was like, Joe Budden, you're such a, like, I can't say the word. But I was just like, because I understood, like, because Mal's whole thing was like, stop the pod, let's figure it out. And Joe Budden was like, this is a business that I'm running. It's £1 million, multi-million dollar business. I have no time to wait until you get your feelings right. But Mal was saying, who's to say it was going to take this long? If you had just focused on this in a week or whatever, we would have had it figured out.
Absolutely.
I take offense you bringing Ish and Ice to come.
Come and take our space.
Uh-huh.
Just messy.
And then now the thing is, because people in the comments are like, oh, Rory and Mal came back because they could see that people were liking Ish and Ice.
It's just, I think that's the thing with Joe Biden, is that he's so messy, and that's probably why people like him, in that he's in his mess. There is some form of talent within there, he knows how to talk the talk. He knows how to walk the walk, but it is so messy. And even if you think about the whole Spotify thing, and I know we spoke about this, and I was like, I felt for him, it was, if that's what he wanted to do at that time, then he should explore other options and other possibilities, and at that episode where he spoke about Spotify, I was really like, okay, you know what, that's what he's saying to me makes a lot of sense. And I think with that whole industry, artists and owning the masters of stuff, and not owning just, what the owners of these companies want you to own, but owning your actual self and owning your voice and owning the masters of the content. I think that is important. And I think the more I hear about stuff in the entertainment industry, I recognize just how important that is. And so when he stepped out, I was like, no, fair enough. But it was a whole, it was a good episode. It was a good episode because it was so messy. He literally laid it all out on the table. Like there was nothing left for anybody, and I was thinking, bloody hell, if I was the director at Spotify, I'd be thinking, geez, because he left nothing, he named people by name. He literally brought in stuff that, that's even us as the general public didn't really need to know. But it was nice that he did, and that's what, I'll bet you that's one of his episodes that got a lot of viewership and listenership, because it was so messy. So I don't know, a year or so down the line, Rory and Mal, this has happened, and again, it's, am I surprised? No. I see both sides in that it's his podcast, it's his brand, it is the Joe Budden podcast. And yes, he has brought these guys from yesteryear, and I'm sure they have got I feel like from the way they have their discussions, he really values them. He values the different thought processes that they bring, the different angles, they tackle stories and stuff from different angles because of Rory and Mao and Parks as well. Was he right in bringing Ish and what's his name? Like I said, from his point of view, I can definitely see I need to continue. I need to put something out. However, I do feel like, if he really valued his Rory and Mao, he would have sorted that out first, and even just say to them to like, oh, you know what, guys, we are not coming to an agreement at this moment in time. So I'm going to go ahead with the podcast, but I'm going to bring these two people in for this episode. Can we have maybe by this certain particular date, can we have talked and then, sort things out? But I need the podcast to go on. So that's the business side. But there's, again, the friendship side that he needs to also think about, which he's clearly not regarding. And also there's the fans. I think by him just bringing Ish and Ice, like, what are you saying to the people who have followed you because of who you are, but also who the people that you're bringing to the pod, So I'm like, he could have handled it better. But at the same time, this is Joe Budden. I expect no less. I expect a lot of mess. I expect a lot of, it's like a raging bull in a china shop. I expect that. And that is how he gets he gets people talking about him. So not only will Charlemagne be talking about him, everybody will be talking about what is happening. So in essence, is it also just a way of him to get more listeners and more people subscribing to his Patreon? He's got Patreon as well, so he's got people who are subscribing to that. And we'll never know if he lost people because of that whole ish, or if he gained people. We'll know, because I'm sure he'll be wanting to share that. But yeah, and yet I see also Rory and Miles, like, how he can feel so devalued. They have been with him for such a long time. They stood by him, the whole Spotify thing. And even I remember just reading the comments when the whole Spotify thing went left, and people were saying to them, like, do you guys, you're okay. You don't need Joe. Do your own thing. But they stuck with him. They really stuck with him, as toxic as he is. They stuck with him for all this time, and putting, I guess, even their own lives on hold just so that they could just progress with this particular venture. So to devalue them like that, I feel like that's also unfair. But this is entertainment.
Yeah.
I feel like I've ranted.
No. You've seen it all. It's entertainment. And I think last thing for me is this whole situation kind of made me respect Joe Budden as a conversationalist more, because I was like, he talked himself out of this whole thing, and because you want to hear what he has to say. However, this whole like, oh, this is business, this is friendship, it's kind of like, yeah, but business doesn't have to be nasty, right? Yeah. So I think for me, like when Rory and Mal came back, and like when Mal said to Joe Budden, you look me in my face and say to me, this podcast is none of my business. I was like, yeah, like I get, and Mal is not like I think Mal's like those by the code type of guys and everything. So it's like, yeah, I get why Mal would walk away. And it was interesting because Rory, although he was like the main sort of cause thing, like it felt like Rory's issues had gone, like his tension had gone and everything. Like he was back to like, oh, this is business. But I don't know, Mal, like it kind of felt like it's like, oh, like you broke some kind of code. So for me, I was like, I respect Joe Budden's talent. Like I can't, like he's one of those people where like people are gonna follow and he's entertaining. However, it's just the whole like business doesn't, you can't look at your friends and say, oh, this is my podcast, it's my business. And but I guess maybe it's also that thing where maybe it did start out with them as friends, but now obviously
the business, yeah.
But still, I disagree that business always has to be like
awful.
Yeah, like
it then, like, sorry, I've still got my work hat on, because it brings me back to how you get things moving, because with Joe Biden, like when he, in that particular situation where he's saying to somebody that the pod is not your business, when he's making these decisions, like, okay, I'm going to bring Ish and Ice in, that's very transactional. He's not using his feelings at all. But then when and those are, you need those sort of people to kind of drive things forward. Whereas if it was somebody else, if it was you'd be like, oh, let's stop the podcast. And then, what are the repercussions of that? So I'm not advocating, I'm not saying that that's the way to do it, but I'm saying at times, you do need to kind of switch on that brain and be like, okay, so I need to put out an episode on Monday, and this has happened, and I'm not going to get, those guys are not going to come in to the studio on Monday, but I want a podcast out on Monday. So you do need to put that business hat on. At the same time, you can't use words like because words like that also stay with people. You can't say to someone that the pod is not your business, because it's going to you can turn around 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years down the line and like, oh, I'm not coming tomorrow, but you've been like, oh, but you've been paid. I'm like, oh, but the pod is not my business. So you will remember that. You will always remember that. So there's a way in which you can speak to, whether it's your friends or whether it's your colleagues or your employees, in regards to motivating them to do stuff. I think.
Absolutely. Well said. And then Charlemagne on Brilliant Idiots, the first thing was like, I just want to let you all know that I respect each and every one of you.
Literally just milking it. And that's it, isn't it? That's the nature of entertainment, is that one person's downfall is another person's rise. So you'll find that they'll capitalize on that. Like, I'll never treat you like Joe Budden. It's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, but there's probably some truth to it, because Charlemagne's been stable. But again, like I say, we're talking about these people, clearly they're entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what they're supposed to be giving us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the genius behind him, is that he will get people talking. He's messy, but he'll get people talking about the mess. Some people will bring mess onto the timeline and be like, oh, I'm not getting involved with that. But here we are, generating conversation.
Nah. It is good. It's good. Should we call it a wrap?
Yes.
I need to eat.